So we have this horribly embarrassing faux pas of Donald Trump starting to badger people at the NATO summit and say Russia is holding Germany captive. And then after this goes on, we now have this going in the direction that is exactly where many people predicted it would go, which is that Donald Trump is threatening to pull the United States out of NATO altogether. We've seen this very up and down relationship between Trump and NATO. First, it wasn't really clear Trump knew what NATO actually was. It's actually still not completely clear that he does. It doesn't seem that he knows who does what for whom. Does he want to stay in? Does he want to get out? He initially made some anti-NATO comments, including during the presidential debates with Hillary Clinton, or maybe even the Republican primary debates. Then later he said, no, we want to be a part of NATO. And then now reportedly making threats for the United States to go it alone, leaving NATO altogether. So let's kind of build this up so we all are on the same page. What is NATO? NATO is a treaty organization based on an agreement from the late 1940s, I think 1949. And it now includes 29 countries in North America and Europe. And the main point of it is what's called collective defense. What the NATO member countries agree to do is mutually defend each other if and when there are attacks from external countries, countries that are not part of the 29 countries. So if one member country is attacked, like Germany, the United States is saying, as part of this NATO agreement, we will come to Germany's defense. We don't need to get into all the details, but needless to say, Trump's big gripe with NATO has been that some countries aren't paying their fair share. And as Trump describes it, this is because there are these spending targets that countries are supposed to aspire to. They're not binding in reality. And Trump doesn't like that some countries, including Germany, haven't increased their NATO contributions as much as Trump believes that they are actually bound to do. And reports are that Trump completely derailed the meeting just hours ago in the early afternoon, Central European time, very, very early in the morning here, and started making demands, which, depending on which version of the story you believe, might include a demand that members report to Trump by January how they are going to reach their spending targets. Can you imagine Trump showing up and saying, everybody here report to me by January when you're going to spend more money on this? Other reports include that Trump threatened to, quote, do our own thing, or to, quote, go it alone if things aren't to his liking by some completely arbitrary date that he appears to be trying to set. He was later asked, did you threaten to pull out of NATO, or was that not what you meant to do? He didn't answer that, but he said he believes if he wanted to pull out of NATO unilaterally, that he would be able to do it without getting congressional approval. This is an absolute train wreck. This is, first of all, Trump bullying. Who the F is Trump, quite frankly, to start making these demands and to take over the summit with these completely bogus and arbitrary impositions of requirements on the other countries? Number two, this is particularly dangerous because Trump's followers are clueless about most of the stuff Trump has strong opinions on. So like trade is a good example. Trump knows nothing about trade. His supporters seemingly know just as little. During the campaign, Trump espoused an unbelievable amount of uninformed trade rhetoric, which actually succeeded at convincing his followers that he knows what he's doing. He then gets into office, starts a trade war with our allies that he can't win, and his supporters actually think that this is good. They think that this is going to be a good thing. It's the same thing that's likely to happen here. Trump picks on NATO during the campaign, something he and his followers know very, very little about. He will now say, hey, I might pull out and I can pull out unilaterally if I want to. And his supporters will, of course, say, great, do it. You're the boss here. Don't be pushed around. Pull out of NATO. And then, of course, what you have to remember is that no one would like the United States to leave NATO more than who? Vladimir Putin and Russia. The United States leaving NATO, even just making the threat to leave NATO, even saying if I wanted to pull out, I could do it just on my say-so. This is what Putin wants. And huge coincidence, it's not Sri Lanka that wants the United States out of NATO. It's not Equatorial Guinea or New Zealand. Russia would love the United States out of NATO. Just a coincidence, right? I mean, it's never one of those other countries. And lastly, there's the legal question. Can Trump leave NATO unilaterally? Unclear. I'm hopeful that we won't actually need to dig that deep on that issue because I'm hoping Trump isn't actually going to try to do it, but legal opinion is divided. And if Trump did need congressional approval, you can bet that a really great thing to stop him from getting that would be voting in 2018, voting in November of 2018. So it is yet another reason to vote in November if you're concerned about the anti-NATO stuff that is going on. Embarrassment after embarrassment during this NATO summit. Send me your thoughts. I'm on Twitter at @dpakman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. Today's program is sponsored in part by Futur. Futur is a social forecasting game where players come together and compete with each other to predict future events. You open up the game on your phone or web browser, you'll see a whole range of forecasts covering topics across the board, politics, sports, so much more. You wager on predictions about real-world events using Futur's in-game fake currency, and you earn more of this currency every time you make a prediction that comes true. You can show off your prediction skills to friends, improve your forecasting ability. I'm even on Futur. You can find my account by clicking the link in the description if you're watching this on YouTube, and you can sign up now at futur.com and start making your forecasts on political topics and so many other topics. It's free and it's available on both Android and iOS as well as on web browsers. That's futur.com.